All right, good evening and welcome to the Writing Gals. We are four sweet authors, sweet warm romance authors. We are sweet authors, but we're sweet romance authors staying up late talking everything writing. And before we get into the topic of today, let's talk about what we're doing right now. So Judy, why don't you tell us what you're working on?
I am still working on my young adult Ridgewater High romance. It Was Always You. And I'm about for 50,000 words in and hoping I can finish it up in the next week or two. And hopefully it will be good. So that's what I'm doing.
And how are your three other books doing?
Oh, they're doing pretty good, I guess. They're all still ranking in around the top 10,000 in the Amazon store. So
You
yeah.
should tell our viewers your experience now with YA compared to adult, since you kind of gotten your feet wet in both areas.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if it's quite as easy to compare it quite yet because I only have one adult so far, but what I've noticed is that my clean romance hasn't really done any better than my young adult contemporary romance, and my rank for my young adult has actually held for longer at a better ranking. So for me, I'm like, I might want to stick with young adult, but I'm gonna still try another clean romance in September and hope that maybe when I have two of them out helping each other, that they will maybe hold a little better
Yeah.
than the one has done on its own. So I'm not
And you
giving up
have
yet.
and you have AMS ads on your
Yeah.
books, right? That's all the advertising that you do.
Yeah, that's all I have going on.
Did you do a free day for your YA books yet?
Yeah, I did one for Don't Forget Me, April 28th, which is when I was launching The Billionaire Bachelor, and it did really well. It raised my ranks back up
Awesome.
and gave me a nice boost.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I think it's interesting that I have some books out that we put out about the same time, and your YA books have consistently stayed where they needed to be, making you money wise than my adult books. And I think just the market or the flooding of the market. Well, after this podcast, we're all going to change to YA, and then we're going to flood the market. No, just kidding. It's just not as prevalent as it is with clean adult romance. So.
Yeah,
That
there's a lot more competition in clean and wholesome, definitely, than the young adult. And so your books will get pushed back a lot quicker.
But
You
your
can,
billionaire book did do well when you
yeah,
released it.
yeah, it reached the highest rank that I've gotten so far on my books. I made it to I made it like 845 in the store. So that
That's
was
awesome.
better than any of my others had gotten.
Hmm.
It just didn't stay there for very long. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that I can figure out how to make it stay next time I
Well, and I
do
think
that.
that shows really well too that people who are YA readers can also be adult romance readers, and the same other way. Adult romance can also be YA readers as long as they're looking for that clean in the title, and I think they'll be more apt to buy.
Yeah, and I think that part of what's helped me is with my young adult, I have been able to put it in both the young adult categories and also the clean and wholesome categories because it is still a clean and wholesome romance, and I mostly have adult readers. So my I can market it to more people.
Yeah.
So
And now that I'm trying to dabble in some YA, I'm trying to do some market research, and it's hard to find YA clean
mm,
romance. So
yeah, it
I'm
is.
like
That's
excited
why
to.
I read it because I'm like, I need something for my kids to read.
Exactly. Well, awesome. Congratulations. We're excited for the next book to come out.
Yeah, thanks.
And what about you, Victorine?
Well, I'm in the middle of a book launch, so my fourth billionaire book, and it's part of the resort books as well, is in the middle of its soft launch. And so let me see. Today is, I believe, day 8 or 9 for my book launch, and it's up to 400 something in the store. So it's
Yeah,
doing pretty good.
That's awesome. And
I'm
that, I
pretty
mean, obviously
excited.
you're a New York Times bestseller, so you have had your books pretty high, but is that the highest you've been able to get since you started this soft launch?
I think that's the highest my billionaires have gone. Yes. And I have a few more promos lined up. Some more paid promos and some more newsletter swaps that I think it'll go even higher. So
Perfect.
Nice.
yeah,
That's awesome.
really.
And then you're working on another billionaire book though, right?
Yes, I'm working on another billionaire book, and I'm also writing a reader magnet that's just a regular romance. So just kind of working on that. Plus I'm teaching a class for RWA the month of June. So I'm working on that as well. So busy.
You're our resident teacher of all of us.
I guess so.
We're all aspire to be the person that is sought after to be classy. And Michelle is with her family right now and has promised to pop on if she gets a moment. So when she does, we can let her tell us what she's working on. And are you done, Victorine?
Yes.
Okay. And I am working on, so I wrote and published Marrying an Athlete, and that is doing amazing. So I decided to keep my price at 99 cents to see if I can keep my rank. And it is dropping, but it's not dropping as fast as it is once I change the price. So I'm pretty satisfied with it. Bulk of my money is still coming from my KU reads. I think the last couple of days I've had about 80,000 and higher. So that's been really amazing to see that come in, and still selling books pretty consistently every day. My personal assistant is working on my AMS ads and she is rocking it. So I'm excited to see some of my books that have slipped down to the 20 to 30,000 range come back up. So pretty excited about that. And then I just finished writing Marrying a Billionaire, which was a really fun and exciting one. My heroine is pregnant in the story and doesn't want to tell anybody. You find out like within 2 sentences of the book, so I'm not spoiling anything. But that has been really fun to write. It's kind of been a dream of mine to write one with a pregnant heroine in it. So that one is off to beta readers and hopefully will be released next weekend if I can get it back in time for my editor. And then I am dabbling in YA, and I just finished my first ever photo shoot, and my models were so cute, and I'm secretly hoping they get married, and then they will toast me at their wedding because I introduced them. And so I'm trying to currently figure out what cover to do that, and I'm about 11,000 words into that book. So I'm really, really excited about the things that are coming up. And I think Michelle just texted and said she's not going to be able to make it on, so we will just move forward with our topic for tonight. So the question, or one of the questions that we got was, what happens between finishing the book and pushing publish? So this is for obviously indie authors looking to, not obviously, pushing publish, that would be an indie author thing to do. So we're going to talk about all the steps that we take, all the things we do from editing to cover art to formatting and so forth. And then this came from our question and answer, technically kind of part 2 of our Q&A. But since it's a very meaty topic, we just decided to have its own show. So what is the first thing you do after typing the end?
First I celebrate and go, yay, I typed the end. And then I screenshot the end and share it usually. I'm like, oh, I just finished the book. And then I will usually, a lot of the times I have read through my books and edited them along the way. And so then I will send it off to beta readers. But for my first 2 books, I didn't do the critiquing along the way. And so that was when I would slowly go through with my critique group forever. But I really like the new way of critiquing it along the way, so I can get it beta read right off. And then while it's at beta readers, I will usually read through it again and just fix up the last few things and then wait for my beta readers to get it back to me and make the changes they suggest if I agree with them. Usually, they're pretty smart, so I do. And how far do you want me to go into what I do?
Oh, no, that's good because you're actually answering other questions that we have.
Okay.
So the first thing she does is she takes a picture of it and then she posts it on her Facebook page. Awesome. What about you, Victorine?
I think that celebration is important because writing a book and actually getting to the end is such a huge accomplishment. So you really have to take a moment and celebrate that, especially if it's your first book ever. I remember finishing my first draft of my first book ever and just feeling this huge accomplishment that, wow, I wrote a book and I can't believe that I wrote a book. So I think that's really important to acknowledge that you did something huge and hard. But if it's your first book, I think the most important thing then to do is get feedback on it, because a lot of times you can be writing in your own little writing bubble and you think you're portraying certain things certain ways and you're not. It can be super easy to slip into all these writing don'ts, all these beginning things that everybody does when they start writing, but they don't know they're doing. So it's really important, I think, to get some feedback from other more experienced writers who are especially writing in your genre and who are doing well in your genre. So that would be number one thing that I do. And I still do that today. After I finish a book, I get feedback on it. But I do kind of go through and do an editing pass. But
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think this was a question posed, and maybe we could ask it here on the Writing Gals, is what do you do if you are a perpetual starter and you never actually get to the finished part? Because I think you're like, yeah, you actually finished a book, but I think finishing is such an important thing. How do you guys not lose your steam in your books to continue to getting to be able to type the end?
That's a fantastic question, because that can be such a roadblock for authors, especially if you are a pantser and you just start writing and it's shiny and new and fun and exciting when you first start, and then you kind of slow down and you maybe don't know where it's going, or it gets a little boring to you and you're just not sure what comes next, and this other idea pops up and it's like, oh, that one's shiny and new and I like that one better, so I'm going to start that, and you never end up finishing anything. So I think for those kind of writers, I think it's really important to step back and to do a little plotting and to do a little bit of, okay, where is this story going? What made me excited about this story when I first started? And what can I insert into this scene to make it exciting again for me?
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
did you have an answer to that?
I think what Victorine said. I've not really been a person like that. I'm like, once I start something, I have to finish it. I have all these goals set in line, and I have to, just finish it, even if the book is like making me mad, which is why I did take a really long time to finish my first 2 books. So, just stick with it and fight your way through it if you have to, if it is worth finishing, and you should. So
I think for me, when I get stuck on something like that, I watched an interview for an author that does very well, indie author, and she talks about how she needs to fill her creative tank. And I think that's important for us to do, especially if you have a multi-job person. Either you work full-time, or you're a mom full-time, or you work part-time and are mom part-time, or however it works for you. Most of us aren't writers full-time. And so it's important that when you feel like that, take a break, take a step back, give yourself 1 or 2 days, get a Kindle Unlimited subscription, watch some Netflix, binge watch. Because most of the times when I'm stuck in a book and I don't know what to do, I watch something that inspires. Either I'm kind of like, oh yeah, my characters could totally do something like that, or it gets the juices flowing for something else. And I also think it's important to know where you are in your writing journey. So sometimes, like if I was to say, okay, I want to write a different genre, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to try to write, it's not going to come out as fast as when I write contemporary romance, because I've written 8 now. And so it's pretty much like ingrained in me. I know where I need to go. This last book, I was hitting about 35,000 and I was getting to the climax. And I was like, okay, nope, this is bad. I got to go back and I got to go fill in some more words and do some more scenes to get up to that word count of 50,000, which are where I want to be, because I knew it was just a little too soon for my climax to be happening. But I do it about 39 to 40,000 words, because then I know it takes about 10,000 words to get through the dark moment and then to have the resolution and the epilogue. So it's very, very much a part of me now. Now, if I was to try to do something different, maybe I need to start writing and be excited and then get a little stuck. And then I go and do some research or do some reading, or I figure things out and then I come back to it. And that same thing goes for after you type the end. It has to do with where you are in your writing journey. So my first book, which will probably never see the light of day, I finished writing it and I sent it off to a friend, and she got about 30% of the way through it and said, okay, here are the problems. And I didn't get offended. I didn't get upset. I said, okay, there's no point in having her continue to read the book if I'm going to go and change the entire plot. So I was grateful for what she said. I listened to it. I went back and I changed it. And I wrote another 50,000 words. And after I finished writing it, I was like, oh, my main character is flat. I need to put somebody else in there to bounce her off of, so she doesn't just seem to be this like person, this filler that's just bobbing through the story, you know? And so then I rewrote it again. So if you are, that is where you are in your writing journey. Like I said, finding people to tell you what you can do better is important. If you are a person who's like, no, I'm just going to publish it and I'm going to keep moving on, then do what you can, put it out in the world, and then move forward. So I think that's a huge one too, is not to get obsessed with tiny edits, but to get it as good as it can. And if you want to publish it and send it out into the world, I might not suggest it, but doing that as well. And then another thing I do after I type the end, before I send it to beta readers, is I read through it one time. I'm not the kind of person who just lets my story sit for 2 weeks and then I go back to it, because I don't have 2 weeks. So I pretty much push the end, and then the next day I listen to it at like 2 times the speed as I go through it, catching any of the typos and things like that. Most of the time, by the time I push the end, I'm pretty much secure in how the story is going to go. I do a lot of the to me, a lot of the changes that need to be made to my book are made in the first couple of chapters. And then after that, it's pretty much, I've got it established, I've got my characters established, and then it's just moving them through the paces and having them fall in love and having kisses and all those fabulous things. So, okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, though, that you made about the, if you do feel like you're getting burnt out, to take a break and read things and watch Netflix, because that like happened to me this afternoon. I'm like, I'm so done with this story. I hate it. It's terrible. I'm never going to finish it. I'm stuck. And so I was trying to force a kiss that it wasn't time for it to happen yet. And so I had to take a step back. I talked to my husband. He helped me figure out what to do. And so yeah, just taking the break sometimes will help you get through. That's one of the things I definitely do often. So,
well, and I think it's important to think of it as a tank. Like, it has to have deposits and withdrawals. And when you write, you're making giant withdrawals. It's very time consuming and taxing on your body. So you want to make sure that you are equally putting into there the creativity that, and I think as writers or anybody who creates things, art, we are very, we spend a lot of our emotions into what we're doing, and we want to make sure that we are putting that emotion back into us as well. So, yeah. Okay, perfect. So the next question is, are beta readers necessary, and where do you find beta readers?
I would say absolutely. Yes, definitely necessary, because there's so much you can't see in your own work. Even now, I use beta readers, and just to make sure that I'm still on the right track, and that if there's anything I put in there at all that readers don't understand or they think it's a little wonky, my beta readers will tell me. Mm-hmm. Where do you find them? That's a little bit harder. I would say I find them online in author groups. I find them locally in author groups as well, or anywhere where you socialize with other authors. I think I know some authors who use readers only as beta readers, and I think that can be valuable, but I wouldn't only use readers, because writers can give you a perspective that readers cannot. I don't know if you know anything about art, but if you go to an art museum and you look at paintings, you can kind of tell which ones you like. And if someone paints a painting and you can tell they're an amateur at it, and you can tell it doesn't belong in a museum, but you can't usually voice what is wrong with it until you have studied art, studied design, and you know the right words to use. But you can look at something and say, no, that's not a professional. Just like with writing, if you're not a writer and you haven't studied writing, you can't come out and pinpoint what can make it better. So I think getting actual writers who write in your genre to beta read for you is essential.
And there's nothing more frustrating than having someone read your book and say, I don't like this part. And you're like, okay, well, I like this part. Why don't you like this part? And they go, well, I don't know. I just don't like it. And then you're like, okay, well, I don't know how to fix that because I don't know why I don't like it. And I don't know how to fix it to make it so you like it. And so it can just be really frustrating to have people say something like that. So what about you, Judy?
So I say yes. Yes, definitely beta readers are important. And to find them, I use a lot of the things that Victorine uses, find them online, in different author groups. And then also I do have some friends that I know that are readers and that I have used in the past, that I'll always ask again. But what I did when I didn't have any, really, I just got on Facebook and just asked my friends, like those who I trusted, like I, made it so that only certain ones could see my post. And so I just ask, like, I have a book that I need read, if you're willing to read it and give me feedback, I'd love that and whatever, and just let me know. And that's how I found a few of them, and some of them have been really, really good. So that's another way if you want to try people you do know. So.
And go ahead.
Sorry, I would say don't be afraid to approach another author and ask them, would you ever want me to beta read for you? And just volunteer, because a lot of times, they would say, sure, I'd love it, and I'll beta read for you, and they'll offer to read for you. So don't be afraid to approach other authors and ask if they ever want to swap manuscripts, especially ones that you've read and you really like what they're writing, because then you can pinpoint, this author does this really well. I want their feedback on mine, and just ask.
And I think it's important too, if you're ever approaching a person to have them beta read, be specific about what it is that you're looking for. Because a lot of people who, especially if you're asking a writer to beta read for you, it's a lot of time that they're taking away from their own personal writing. And a lot of times you do swaps, which is great. But depending on where you are in your writing journey and the person that you're asking to beta read for you. So being willing to say, I just need, and so if you're not going to take, if you're like, well, I want a really, really thorough job, and they take that time, but then really inside you're like, well, I'm not going to make those changes because I've already written the book and I'm not going to move. Let them know that, because if they're going to go and take the time to make all of these suggestions that you're not really going to take, then no one's going to be happy either way. So I would say be specific on what you're looking for, and also be open to what is being said. I would say beta readers are definitely necessary. They find a lot of issues that you can have in your book that you like Victorine says, you can't see yourself, or you have to remember, when you write a book, you do not come along with it. So you can't be looking at them and they're reading and you're like, why didn't you laugh? And they're like, well, was it supposed to be funny? And yeah, it was supposed to be funny. And this is why it was supposed to be funny, because in page, 2 pages, this is going to come out. And now why aren't you laughing? So, that's what's good about having a beta reader, is that they can be there just to respond. And then the other thing is make sure you note on the manuscript when you laughed, what you thought was funny, because there's nothing more depressing than getting a manuscript back and you just see comment after comment after comment, and you're like, well, did you like any of it? So make sure you do a little smiley face, or a haha, or I loved this, or this was great, because that can really help swallow the person swallow the parts that can be painful, because it does hurt to have people come back and say, this is not working for me.
Yeah, and if you're a brand new writer and you don't know what you're doing when you're beta reading someone else's book, there's a wonderful beta read sheet that I found online, and I will post the link in our Facebook group. And it just goes through and asks you questions about whatever manuscript you're reading, and you can answer those questions and give feedback that way, and it's super wonderful. So I will make a note to post that in our Facebook group tonight. So
Nice.
new writers can use that.
Yeah, I want to see what that looks like.
Did you have anything else, Judy?
Oh, I disagree with you a lot. Like, you want to hear the good with the bad, and yeah, be willing to make the changes that they suggest if, especially if multiple beta readers have commented on the same things. So.
Yes, and that leads right into our next question. What do you do if a beta reader suggests major changes? I would say the first thing I do is I get a manuscript back and I look just through all the comments and I don't make any changes and I just kind of stew on it for a little bit and think about it. Sometimes I get comments back and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to make that change. Brandon Sanderson says if at least 3 people say you should make a change, then you probably should make a change, which is a really hard rule too, because you could be like, well, 2 people said it, but 3 people didn't. So what do I just, where do I go with this? So you kind of have to use, reader discretion or your personal author discretion. And then I also think that if you decide not to make a major change that has been suggested to you, then just be prepared that you will see that in your reviews. Because if, like my last book, I was about 50-50 for people making, oh, I want this change, and other people were okay with it. So I really wasn't sure where I was going to go with it. And then it was kind of like, well, how much of the book do I really want to make a change in? It's written. Part of me is like, I would just rather publish it. And I mean, it's a good story. It's a sweet romance. But I'd rather just focus on a new one. And I mean, in order for me to make some of the changes, I would have really had to really scratch a lot of it and start over. And I was like, yeah, not worth it for me, but that's okay. I knew going into it's going to be that way. So when I get, reviews that reflect that, then I'm like, yeah, okay. So they were in that pool and they weren't in this pool. And then I got other people who just loved it. So, knowing that if you decide not to make a change, that you might get some pushback, and then just being okay with that.
I think there's a danger in trying to say all of the time, well, I like my book how it is. I'm never going to change anything. But then there's the other danger of every single suggestion made to you, you go and make that change to try and please every single person. But then your book becomes this big mess because you keep asking people for changes and you keep making changes, and then then it falls apart. So I think there's a point where you just have to say, this is what I want as an author. And you just have to make an intelligent choice and on what feedback you're going to take, what feedback you're not going to take, and then stop sending it out. You can send it out too much, and then you have a total mess and you never finish.
Yeah. Just look at Michelle and I. We just I sent out, what cover do you like? And Michelle said, should I do first person or third person? And we both were messaging each other. We're like, it's like 50-50. I don't know what to do now. Everybody likes this and they don't like that. And it's just kind of like, eventually you have to just go, no, I'm going to make the final decision. And then you just go with it. Because everybody's going to have an opinion about everything.
Definitely.
Yeah. And you want the book to be by you, not a book by committee. So you kind of got to use some of your own opinion. But I to go along with that, if they do suggest major changes and I'm in like a time crunch and I do agree with what they said, I'll sometimes try to find if there is an easier way to kind of make the change in a different spot. Like maybe they're suggesting that this thing like way far back in the book need to change that would change like the whole thing, or maybe I really just need to change the sentence later on that caused them to have that issue. So just I'll try to see if there's an easier way out of it.
I do that too. Yes.
Well, and I think as a beta reader, it's good to have people who are just like, if you like, Victorine does this for me because I like to make my people in love more than they should be and have feelings too soon. And so Victorine knows this about me. And so she'll just go and she'll be like, you can delete this sentence. And like, instead of being like, Amy, your people are too love too fast. And I'm like, well, I don't see that obviously because I'm writing it. So being very specific and saying, delete this, and I'm just like, okay, I'll delete that. That should solve that problem. So being specific, because sometimes people will say things and all you have to do is go in and change a couple of things, a couple sentences here or a couple sentences there, and you've fulfilled whatever issue they were having. You'll be amazed how much one sentence can clarify a lot of stuff. So don't feel disheartened when something like that comes. I do have to say, so I'm going to kind of put my writing gals here on the spot. Tuesday, I had a writing group with them, and they told me they did not like certain parts of my first chapter. And so today I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen to them and I'm gonna change it. And I hated what I was writing. Like, I hated it. I was like, this is not my story. So I'm sorry, you guys, but I'm not going to listen to you. And I'm going to do what my story wanted, because it honestly, I have a lot of like, kind of like a movie announcer sort of thing at the beginning of my YA book. And it's just a couple of paragraphs, so it's not that bad, but I love it. And I think it's totally my character. And like, she's kind of thinking into this story. And so they were like, well, it feels kind of telling stuff, but seriously, it was like when I tried to change it, or I tried to write to start fresh of a new chapter, and I was like, the whole time I'm like, I hate this. This is not my story. So as much as their advice was good, and I did go back and try and make some changes and some tweaks, sometimes writing your story all over again is not going to feel like your story. So it's kind of taking bits and pieces of what people have said, making it clearer, but keeping it to who your book or what your book was supposed to be. And then I think it's sometimes. Oh, go ahead.
Well, sometimes it's more about the overall of what they're saying rather than the specific. So if they say, you know, I don't like this about your character, maybe trying to figure out why they don't like that, you know, and pulling back and try, okay, what are they really telling me?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, no, you need to delete these first 3 paragraphs. What's the bigger picture of what they're trying to tell me, you know?
Exactly.
And pull back and try and figure out the bigger issue.
Well, and then you can also get overzealous people. And I will admit, I was an overzealous beta reader when I first started out, and you could get, and they're gonna do passive voice. They're gonna stick that, and they're gonna, you know, your ly words. They're gonna tell you to delete all those, and you used said too many times, and you need to change that, or show not tell. We were talking about this one time, and I'm like, I'm so sick of people saying you should show not tell, because I'm like, if you literally showed everything that was going on and not said, it would take you forever. So Michelle started talking about how she's going to write a book about how to get a person to walk across the room without actually saying they walked. So, you know, you put one foot in front of the other. You put your right foot in front of it. I mean, like, there comes a time where you have to do some telling. He walked across the room instead of saying how he walked across the room. So there is some times you're going to get beta readers that are going to be like that. So you have to pull back and have to say, okay, what am I going to take from this, and what am I not going to take from this? So.
Yeah, okay, I totally agree with all that. And then, like, after our critique group today, that's why I got stuck, because I was trying to do what you guys said. I'm like, it's just not going to work. Sorry. It's not going to be a 50,000 word book. It's going to be, I don't know how many. It's going to be a lot.
And that's how it goes sometimes. And honestly, you have to remember that once a person beta reads your book, they're moving on with their life. So you're stuck with this book, and you have to make it your own, and you have to make it like, you know, you have to promote it. So if you're looking at this thing and you're like, this is not my book, then you have to pull in and make it true to you. But you also have to realize that if it's so true to you and not true to a market, then you may not be able to sell like you were doing. And then that comes to the market and for love books. Okay. So how do you know your book is ready for an editor?
For me, it's when my beta readers are saying, I really loved it, and I only had, you know, comma suggestions or, you know, little nitpicky things. If that's the feedback I'm getting, I loved it, but here you need a comma, then I know it's ready for the editor.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if I get it from the beta readers and they just had a few changes, and then I make them, and then I read through it and it sounds good, then okay, it's ready. Yeah. and plus my editor, she does, you know, content editing, so she will give me the final go ahead and tell me final things. She'll catch anything that I had left over.
Right. And that's pretty much, I send it out. I get 5, 6, 7, 8 beta readers. Then I make the changes that I feel are appropriate, and then I send it to my editor. So, but excuse me, again, it's going to be where you are in your writing journey. So sometimes you need alpha readers, and then you need beta readers, and then you need a second pair of beta readers, and then it goes off to an editor. So it just kind of depends on where you are at in your writing. I'm grateful for all the editors or not beta readers that stuck through me with other books, or who were willing to read it again after I made changes. So just know that you might need to have a couple pass-throughs, and that's okay. How do you find an editor? for me, it's just asking around and seeing who I like. I have been trying a lot of editors out. I really want to form a relationship with my editor that knows my writing, that knows my writing schedule, that knows how fast I need it and is willing to accommodate that and are good and thorough. So asking other people who they use is probably the best. Writers are awesome networkers. So you know something, tell people about it, tell people how great you think this person is. I'm not a huge fan of going with people who self-promote just because I'm just not the biggest fan of it, but I definitely like it when people suggest people to me.
Yeah, I found my editor by asking in a private Facebook group. I can't say the word. Facebook group of authors that I trusted, and I just asked them for different editors. And then when I had an editor suggested to me, I asked someone who I knew had worked with them what their opinion was of that person, and they gave me a good review of them, and so that's the one I've been using. So yeah, just asking other authors is a great place to start, especially asking authors who write in your genre, who have worked with editors in your genre, because some editors are better at different genres than others, so just like beta readers and critique partners.
Mm-hmm. Victorine?
I have found several great editors through the Kindleboard's website. They have a Kindleboard's Yellow Pages thing where they list tons and tons and tons of freelance editors and cover artists and formatters and people like that. And that's kind of my go-to place. If anybody asks me, where do you find these people? I send them over there because there's so many, and they're just a wide variety of prices and a wide variety of people there. What I would suggest is getting a, what do they call it? Like a free 5-page edit from anybody who before you hire, so you can see their style of editing and if they mesh well with you, because I think that's important.
Yep, that's awesome. And then also, we didn't answer it here, but I like to get a proofer at the end. So I get an editor, and then I get one last person to go through. Some of us, I know in the past for me, before I started determining where my value of my time was going to be, it was going to be writing, it was going to be editing and proofing. I used to listen to my book to catch any grammatical errors, and now I pay a proofer to do that for me, so that my time, the 5.5 hours it takes to listen to my book is 5.5 hours of writing time for me, and I'd actually make more money putting that into writing than I would proofing it. So I have two that I alternate. One edits for me, one proofs, and then the next time that person edits. And I think having a couple people is really important, because what happens if someone has a baby or goes out of town and all of a sudden I'm scrambling for an editor? And then also realizing, if you have editors out there, to realize, yes, you're not perfect, but if you don't edit someone's book well, it can really mess up their reviews. So finding an editor that's good and that will, if something happens, that they'll take ownership for it, is also, I think, really important as well, because we as authors put a lot of trust in editors, because sometimes some of us aren't so grammatically and punctuationally inept, or we are inept, however that works. A lot of times I'm typing, and thank goodness it spell checks and changes my word for me, because half the words I'm like, so when I'm typing in like my email, I'm like, why isn't it just changing it for me? Now I got to go back and delete and figure out how to spell it and all that other stuff. So we do a lot of stock in editors. So make sure that you can find one that you have a good relationship with and that you can trust before you put stuff out there. So do you format your...
Can I just say one more thing? And one more thing, to kind of make it easier on your editor, you can also run your book through Grammarly first, just to kind of give you a good base of the punctuation and the comma thing, because I get commas wrong all the time. So I've been running my book through Grammarly a lot more lately, and so now I'm interested just to see how it changes, how many changes my editor has to make.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think sometimes as an author, we should always be learning. So you should be learning how to use commas. You should be learning how to do, like for me, it's the hyphen words, you know, like, I don't know, what would be an example? Or knowing where to hyphenate like 2 words together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can't even think of an example off the top of my head. I never seem to do that correctly. Yeah. I always don't hyphenate them. So that's something I'm constantly learning how to do. And then, yeah, so editors are great. So do you format your books yourself or do you hire it to be done? I have a Mac, so I have Vellum, and it is a fantastic program. You literally just export or you upload your Word document, and in about 15 seconds, you have an entire book formatted for you. So it is super easy and incredibly fast. It is about $300, but oh my gosh, I used to try and do it through Scrivener, and I didn't do it enough because every time I redid it, it took me like an hour just to remember how to do it all. So I'd have to like create, like I would run it through and then create a book, and then I have to go back and be like, oh no, that's not right. So I got to go back and I got to figure out how to change it. And then I create another book, and then I look at it and I'm like, okay, now that's wrong. Now I got to go back and change. And it was just like, again, it's use of your time, better use writing. So I bought Vellum, and I will never.
Yeah, I use Vellum too, and it is amazing. They do my ebooks and my print books, and I love it. And I will always have a Mac just so I can have Vellum.
I do not have a Mac, and I've been using Draft to Digital to format, and it's free. You can put them up. It's just a website, Draft, and then the number 2, and then Digital, and you can put up your books. You don't have to distribute your books through them to use them to format your books for you. And so, and it's pretty slick. You just put it in there, and it does print and ebook as well.
But you also have a friend that does it too, don't you?
Yes, I do. I have a business called Blue Valley Author Services, and you can look up our website. And my friend Craig and Andy both do formatting, and they do a fantastic job. And so if you don't want to mess with the formatting, if it confuses you, definitely go on Blue Valley Author Services and contact them, because they do a fantastic job.
And I think using somebody to do it, if you really want specific graphics above your chapters or you want fancy things, Vellum is great, but it's not, doesn't have a wide range of things that it can do. So I can pretty much open up an indie author book and look at it and be like, yep, that was made through Vellum, because there's just a few chapter heading, just, you know, designs, and I think they're coming out with more because they're always asking me to update. So I'm hoping that they'll become more, it'll become easier to put your own graphic underneath the chapters and do things like that. So there are some really, really awesome ones that you could find someone to do that for you. So if that's something you want to invest in, that's great. Also, I think Fiverr, Fiverr, has lots of people on there who are willing to format your book for you. So
yeah, you can find editors on there too.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, so how do you find a cover? Oh, how do you? No, we did that. How do you find a cover artist? I hire Victorine.
Yes, Victorine is the best. So.
But do not hire her, because she can only do my books. She doesn't need to be so busy. She's doing everybody else's.
Yeah, she has to write too, you know.
But first, she needs to do my covers, and then she can do everything else.
We'll let her control her own schedule. We won't try to manipulate that.
No, I will. You will do my stuff. Just kidding.
I have hired my sister now, and she is learning to do the graphic design work for covers too, and she's doing a fantastic job. So I am able to take on a little more work now that I've hired my sister. But if you don't want to hire me, that's fine. I would suggest just ask some people, if you like their cover, ask them who did your cover. You know, indie authors are super at sharing information, and you can ask them who did their cover, and I don't know anybody who's going to not want to tell you that information.
And if you're too scared to ask, you can even like look in their acknowledgments section of their book.
Sometimes it's in there,
and they'll put it in like the copyright page.
Yes.
And there are some websites that you can go and just directly buy a pre-made cover. So you can search through artists that just are making stuff, and they're deciding, oh, I don't have anyone for this, but I wanted to make this cover. I'm going to put it up there. You can purchase it. Joining a lot of author groups on Facebook is good. 20 books to 50K, they have an actual Google Docs form that has lists of, if I like fantasy, I'm looking for this. They have links that specifically talk about cover artists, because I know Michelle used Not Victorine for her fantasy, and so she found, I'm not sure how she found it, but I think it was something like that. She did a little research behind it. My middle grade covers are actually a girl I know who went to BYU for BYU illustration. And so when I wanted to do my covers, I asked her to do it for me. I obviously paid her a lot more because it was all hand drawn. And so, and honestly, the thing you do besides your editor is your cover. That is going to sell your book. So making sure your cover is on point and looks great and doesn't look like it was made by you. Unless you're a graphics design, then it's great that it looks like it's by you. But if I was to do my cover, it would look terrible. So I just defer to the experts to execute my vision, and it's normally done just fabulously. So, and then if you're like me and you can't find any pictures that you want to do on a stock photo, and then you find some high school kids that are willing to dress up and hug each other while you take pictures of it, and then a photographer, and you will just be surprised on how fun it is to do something like that. So make sure that if you're going to do something, spend time on your cover. And money. That's where you want to put everything, honestly.
Yeah. Don't pay too much though, like thousands of dollars is probably a little too much.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, obviously have a budget and stick to your budget.
Yeah.
and then work from there. Okay. Is it important to have a newsletter before you publish your first book? And how do you get people to subscribe? We've kind of covered this over and over in our launch one too. Yes, you should have a newsletter yesterday. And so go do it now. We had a couple of people had success by putting up the first 10% of their book. I did that on Insta Freebie, writing a reader magnet, which Victorine will soon learn how amazing it is, that it will just attract you. But I get people to subscribe because I do free days on my books, and I really think that's how I get it with my reader magnet, having that publicity. I can't say that word. So that's how to do it, or offering something to them to say, if you subscribe, you get to find out about me. And also, I think it's important with your newsletter as well is to establish exactly what type of sender you're going to be. I am a once to almost twice a week sender because it's an important marketing tool I use. And I also think romance readers are voracious. They will finish my book in one day. And so if they're, can you imagine waiting 6 months to hear from an author about what's the next good book to read? So it kind of depends on your genre, what they're going to be expecting, how fast they can get through a book. And I kind of set that up, and I don't get sad when people unsubscribe, because I'm just like, well, I need people who are willing to find books and who are willing to read. And if I'm bugging you, I'm sorry. And we're probably just not a good fit for each other. But there are so many times that I see people post, where do you find clean books? I have no idea where to look on Amazon. All I ever find are, spicy romances. I don't know where to look. And I think I'm doing a service. I'm saying, here, this is an author I know and trust. This is clean. You will like it. And then my readers, I think, appreciate that, because I know I would. Victorine, what about you?
Definitely. I agree with all of what you said. And yeah, I just started my newsletter actually after my first book took off and sold 100,000 copies, which was really sad, because I thought that's 100,000 people that could have signed up for a newsletter, and I didn't have it in the back of my book. I didn't have one set up.
They so would have, because not many people had newsletters.
I know, it was brand new. I'm just crying over this. So don't be like Vicky. Don't do the wrong thing. Set it up before you publish so that it's ready. It's in the back of your novel. If you liked this, sign up for my newsletter. And even if you don't have a reader magnet or anything, at least have it set up with a link so they can subscribe if they want to know more about your books. Just do that.
And I also think now with the whole new GDPR or GDRP, whatever it is, make sure you're following the guidelines that have been set out. I mean, people are giving you their personal information, so don't abuse it. Don't start sending them things they wouldn't, like viruses. I don't know how you would do that, but
and the big one is don't subscribe people who don't want to be on there. I mean, don't go through all your email contacts and put them all on your list. I can't tell you how many author newsletters I get subscribed to just because I have websites that deal with ebooks. It is really annoying, and I unsubscribe to all of them, and I always click the box that says I did not subscribe to this, and if you get too many of those, I can get you in trouble. So don't do it.
Yeah, let them come to you organically if you are giving people. And also I think too with people in newsletters, I think people forget. So if you don't send out, so even if you haven't published your book yet, try and send something out once every couple of weeks, once a month. Just remind people who you are and what they, you signed up for this, and this is where I'm at in the book, and here's my cover, and here's a little section. I think people are easily to forget who you are and why you're getting emails from them. So if you are starting out, don't have a book published yet, don't let people forget who you are, because as soon as you send out your first newsletter, you're going to get a ton of unsubscribers because you're going to be like, who the heck's this person? I don't know who this is. So,
or find other authors who write in your genre and ask them, hey, do you want me to promote your book on my newsletter? Because you want to groom your readers to read your genre. And if you are promoting other authors, then you have double the plus, because you're giving your reader something they want, and you're also making friends with this other author who will then, when your book comes out, shout about your book in their newsletter.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. How do you determine the price of your book? Judy, you were just talking to me about this today.
Oh, so first I released at 99 cents because that's a great way to get your book up high in
That's what
visibility.
The cool kids do.
Yeah. And, maybe once you're more established, you can start releasing at a higher price. But the way I decide how to price my book is I'll just look at all the other books in my genre and find the ones that are selling really well and just take note of what price they are selling at. And for my young adult contemporary romance, most of the authors there are selling well at $2.99. A few are at $3.99, but the majority are $2.99, and so that's what I have set mine out at, and also in the Clean and Wholesome as well. So,
and I think, Victorine, you are very well versed in this, and you have a very good explanation. What did I speak tonight? Explanation. Oh my gosh, I was trying to write the word conscientious.
Oh, that's hard.
And I could not think of how to spell it. And I had to keep Googling sort of what it would sound like and then seeing what they came up with. And then, when you get the dictionary, you hit the little speaker thing. So you're like, nope, that's not the right word. So a little glimpse into my life. Okay, anyway, sorry, because I was reading on Clean Indie Read, somebody who was talking about this, and I was like, oh, Victorine has a really good answer to this question. So take it away. Wow us with your knowledge.
All I do is look at other books and their ranks and how well they're doing. And if a lot of them are selling really well in my genre, I compare their prices. And I am not afraid to play with price. So for a while there, I had all my books at $2.99, and several of the books that were selling really well were at $3.99. So I upped all my prices to $3.99 just to try it out. And I would say you need to give that a good 3 or 4 month try. Don't just, if sales dip for a day, get scared and change it back. So I kept it there for a good 6 to 8 months. But overall, my rank was slipping down and down, and I was finding it harder and harder to push them back up with advertising. And so I went back to $2.99 because I wanted to be able to keep my books at a certain rank and see a certain income from them. And so, but I would say play with it. There was a time when I put them all at 99 cents just to see what it would do, so don't be afraid of playing with it. But but
Mhm.
also do your market research and look at what other books in your genre are doing.
And I also think it depends on how much you're putting towards marketing. If you're putting a bunch of money of AMS ads or Facebook ads, it does pay to have a higher price range because you're getting more eyes on it. So chances are that the amount of people who are going to purchase it is going to go up as well. But you also have to offset that marketing cost. So just keep an eye on that. And I like that. I like that answer. The answer to this is there is no answer. Try it. And it depends. It depends on where you're at. I wonder if Michelle's Christmas book, she tried to price it, $3.99. It probably wouldn't sell because it's not Christmas. Now, $3.99 back in December probably would have sold pretty well. So it just kind of depends on what's going on.
Yep.
And so I think that leads right into our last question. Do you put your book in Kindle Select or put it up wide?
I have had them both. Sorry, Judy, I'll talk over you now. I'll let you answer in a minute. I've had them in both. I started out wide because there was no such thing as Kindle Select. And when they made Kindle Select, I decided to sit back and wait and look at what the authors were talking about, maybe 6 months or 8 months down the road. Because when something new comes along, there's a bunch of authors that jump on it. And I kind of like to sit back and see what the feedback is after a while. So after a while of watching other authors, I was getting the feedback that other authors were making quite a bit of money in Kindle Unlimited. And so I did try putting my books in Select, and it made an immediate difference to me, over $1,000 a month difference of income that came in from that. And so I have kept all my books in Select since then and have not looked back, because back then I only had a few books, and now I have quite a few, and saying goodbye to that kind of income would make me sad.
Well, and I think that that goes along with the previous question, because the higher you are in rank, the more visibility you have, the higher chances you have to be picked up through KU. So knowing that says, okay, well, I will lose the 2 or 3 sales that I could possibly get for the 5 or 6 downloads that I might get through KU, and then subsequently the amount. Because right now at $2.99, I make the same amount through one book read through KU as I do as a one buy. So to me, the more visibility makes more sense, and that's why we also can do our books at 99 cents when we launch it, because we're really going to be making that money through KU, which is really going to be the bulk of our money. But this is why being connected with other authors is so important, because there's been some talk in 20 Books to 50K where somebody used to be in KU, but it scared them to put all their eggs in one basket, so they have gone wide. And she talks about how it can be beneficial and it can make her the same amount of money, but it helped her because she had a big backlist. So it was a slow build she did by doing each series and putting it out there and then building and building on top of that. I look at how much I make for my books compared to KU, and I'm like, oh, I would be making like $20 a day if I just was based off of what I sell book-wise. So I will probably continue to stay in Select and hope and pray that Amazon doesn't do anything to mess that up. But I have a feeling KU, seeing how they send out, the pot was $19.7 million this month. So I have a feeling that Amazon's going to work really hard not to get rid of Kindle Unlimited, because that seems like a pretty big, pot to be talking about. So go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, you guys pretty much said what I had to say. I keep my books in Kindle Select, and I'm going to be keeping them there for the foreseeable future, just because of, when I look and see how much money I make on just sales versus my page reads, I definitely get a lot more money from my page reads, at least like 80% more. So I like to keep that, and yeah, I plan to stay there unless something really crazy happens. So
well, and I think it's important to note too that you are putting your eggs in one basket, and there could be an opportunity where Amazon flags you and says, hey, you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, and you might be like, no, I'm not doing anything. So there is that worry, but I think for me, I will take the money that I'm getting each month and then deal with that when it comes down the road. Hopefully I sing that same tune later on. But if it really concerns you, go wide. Just realize you're going to have to build a different platform, and it's probably going to be a little bit harder. Nice thing about starting with wide or select is people will take a bigger chance on you as an unknown name, and it's a great way to build up your name. And I think with wide, you do a lot better with the first one free, right? Victorine, you think? Because you said once you put your first book free, you had people emailing you, when can I get the next one on Kobo or Nook?
Yes, I do think wide offers, it's a little bit better to have your first one free. That's what I've read, and that was kind of my experience having a perma free for a while.
Yeah, and that especially if you have a series where you have to read the first book,
yes,
to get to the second book, then definitely that's a good thing to do.
But if you're wide, you get favored by BookBub. That's the theory. So
yes,
you might have them as a bigger marketing tool. Okay, that's all of our questions. So Judy, did you see anyone on the live feed?
I just saw one, and it was on Grammarly. Do you use the Microsoft Word add-on for Grammarly? And for me, so far I haven't, but that's because I wasn't using it as much as I should. And so right now I've just been putting it in Grammarly chapter by chapter. But when I'm all the way done with my book, then yeah, I'll definitely be uploading the whole document and just doing it right from Word so I can get everything all at once right in there. So yeah.
Perfect.
Yes, I do use that, and I do find it helpful now. And sometimes I go through and fix all the commas it tells me to, and then my editor goes through and changes them. So it's depending on what style my editor is using, I guess, it's maybe not as current or something. I don't know. I do not know about commas. I'm really terrible with that. So
I do want to say, though, for things like Pro Writing Aid and things like that, it can be a black hole into trying to figure out exactly. I mean, it's a computer. And so it will tell you this word was used too many times, or you did this, or you did that. So it can be a place that you can find a lot of your time sucked into that might not necessarily be essential. So kind of just pinpoint where your weaknesses are and focus on that instead of focusing on every aspect that can give you.
Yeah, and it doesn't always give you the right answer either. Like it'll tell me to change a word that it definitely does not need changing. So
yes.
It's
exactly.
Like still use your brain, not just the computer program.
Yes.
Yes. It's like when you're texting and you're like, that is not what I wanted to say at all. You can change very quickly your story.
I did see one question. I wasn't monitoring all the questions on the Facebook group. Michelle was doing that and she couldn't be here tonight. But I did see one question about ARC readers. We didn't really go over that. How do you find ARC readers? What are they and stuff like that? So Judy, you want to answer about your ARC team?
Yeah, so I usually I wait to send my ARC copies out until after I have gotten my manuscript back from my editor. Just because then I know, because I will ask my ARC readers if they do see any typos to feel free to tell me about them. And that way I'll know that my editor didn't catch them. And so I like to wait until after that. And so I first started my ARC team by just asking my Facebook friends that I trusted. I didn't ask every single one. I have this special group of Facebook friends.
I am not in that group. I want to tell you.
Yes, you are. You are actually. all of my close friends are. And so I will put it there, or I did. I put it there, and I had some ask to be in it. So I just made a Facebook group for them, and then I will upload my manuscript or my files up to BookFunnel and put it in my Facebook group, and then I'll ask these ladies usually to share it with their Scream teams as well, and then I also have it set up in my, I have in my newsletter service, a group just for my Scream team that I'll send the link to for BookFunnel. And I usually do that like 2 days before I publish, and I'll just tell them to hurry and download it. And while the page is building, I'll give them the link. And then usually by the time I'm ready to start announcing it, I have at least 10 reviews up, and that has worked for me so far. I don't get like the 90 like Victorine has right now, you know, but I have.
We all aspire to be Victorine someday.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I do. Like my Scream team has maybe like 50 people in it right now that's built over the last 7 months or so.
And I think it's important as well as an author to have an ARC team, but to realize that you are telling people to give their honest opinion. So if their honest opinions is not that great, don't get mad. That's just how they feel. And you shouldn't, I see a lot of authors be like, well, this person just gave me a 2-star review and I'm going to kick them off my ARC team. So maybe they didn't like that book. I mean, if they continually give you 2 1-stars, maybe you should reevaluate and say, hey, do you really like to read my books? Like, is this really something that you want to do? And so stand up for yourself in that sense, but also, you know, you say it, because you can't say, I'll give you it if you give me a 5-star review. I was the only reason I'll give you my book. So realize that too. And it's hard. That's one of the reasons I stay off Goodreads, because people are mean. But, you know, also, I always hear your 3-star reviews validate your 5-star reviews, or your 2-star reviews validate your 5-star reviews. So it's saying this is not just my grandma and my aunt and my mom who think I'm amazing and they think my book's amazing because it's from me. These are saying, hey, multiple people have read this, and probably people you don't know, because the people you don't know would not probably give you a 3-star review or lower. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're giving out ARCs. Don't become a vindictive author. Just smile and say thank you and then move on.
And don't like be after them constantly you got my book, you have to review it. Yes. No, just don't, because like life happens, or maybe they didn't like it and they just don't want to post a negative review. So don't force people to review it. Just, it's an option, and you know, encourage them, send them a reminder when you do have the link, and then just hope for the best.
Yeah. And make it fun, you know, make it exciting for people to be on your team. And I always say, consider about 10% of the amount you gave out are going to actually review. Some are going to be more, sometimes it's going to be less. So, and then a fellow person on the Writing Gals, what she did, she actually reached out to her newsletter team and said, hey, any of you guys want to be on my ARC team? And gave them that opportunity to get that kind of first glimpse into your book, get it before anybody else does, that sort of thing. And then, I mean, we like to call them our street team, because we want them to scream about it or yell about it once it comes out, but don't get hound on them. And I try to make it as easy as possible. I say, here's the Facebook link, click on it, click share, you're done. That's it. And so, make sure that, you know, you're like, well, you didn't share my book, so now I'm going to not let you read my next book. You know, life happens, like Judy says, so you kind of just kind of go with the flow. And you'll get reviews eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, like I've been reading a book that I'm a ARC reader for, and it's been out for a couple weeks. I'm still like, because I'm so busy, I haven't been able to finish it yet, but I'm going to get there. I really am. I get there eventually. So.
All right. Well, Michelle says she missed us. So make sure you write on the Writing Gals Facebook group how much you miss Michelle, because she's feeling sad she wasn't able to join us. So give her a heart or a shout out or something like that. And stay tuned for next week. I will let Victorine tell you who is coming.
We have a guest star next week, Christina Dymock. She writes, she's traditionally published and indie published. So she's going to be talking about both the differences between traditional publishing and indie publishing. And she writes as Lucy McConnell. And I think she has another pen name that I completely forgot. I think she also writes under her real name, Christina Dymock. But we're really excited to have her join us and have her talk about the ins and outs of both ways of publishing and how to make a living doing the thing you love, which is writing. So I'm really excited to have her next week.
We are very excited. She reached out and wanted to be on our podcast. We were like, we made it. People want to be on our podcast. It's so exciting. It's not just us talking to each other over and over again. People actually want to come and see the value in this. So we will be here next week, 10 o'clock at night, Central, 9 o'clock Mountain. So come and join us. Ask your questions that you have for a very well-established indie author and traditionally published author. And until then, join us on the Facebook group, The Writing Gals, or check out our website, thewritinggals.com, where you can find all of our Amazon author pages. So you can really check us out and see if we know what we are talking about and if you should listen to us. You shouldn't, maybe. So, and join us in September for the Indie Author Hub. What is it called? The Indie Author Hub and LDS Storymakers Conference in Kansas City, Missouri. Yes. Right? No. Yeah. Is it in Kansas? Yes?
Yes, Missouri.
Okay. Kansas City, Missouri. Well, just join us on the Writing Gals Facebook page and we will let you know. So, all right. We will see you guys later. Thanks for staying up with us. Bye.